Not a confirmation, not a scandal. So why does Dispatch's denial feel more suspicious than silence? What if the most shocking moment in K-pop was not a confirmation, not a scandal, not a blurry paparazzi photo taken from a distance, but a denial that arrived too quickly, too loudly, and at the most calculated moment of the year? What if the words, "they are not dating," raised more questions than any exposed couple ever could? And what if, in the hyper-calculated universe of K-pop media, denial itself had become the loudest signal that something, somewhere, once existed? On December 31st, 2025, as the global K-pop fandom waited with bated breath for Dispatch's traditional New Year reveal, an unexpected message detonated across social media. There was no romantic confirmation, no exclusive photos, no Dispatch couple to usher in 2026. Instead, there was a blunt sentence posted on X. Breaking. BTS Jungkook and aespa Winter are not dating. No build-up. No explanation. Just denial. And in an industry where silence often means safety, this sudden declaration felt anything but normal. Why deny something that was never officially confirmed? Why speak when no agency had issued a statement? Why choose December 31st, the single most symbolic date in Dispatch's calendar, to shut something down before it was even allowed to breathe? For longtime K-pop fans, the reaction was instinctive. Relief for some, anger for others. But beneath the surface, a quieter, more unsettling question began to circulate. If there was truly nothing to hide, why did this denial feel like a move rather than a response? Dispatch is not just another entertainment outlet. It is an institution that has shaped the modern mythology of idol relationships. Its January 1st reveals have ended careers, redefined public images, and rewritten the rules of privacy in the Korean entertainment industry. Dispatch does not speak lightly, and it rarely speaks unnecessarily, which is precisely why this denial triggered alarms rather than closure. Within minutes, fans noticed inconsistencies. The account posting the denial did not fully align with Dispatch's official channels. The image attached showed Jungkook alongside a woman who appeared closer to IU than Winter. The bio of the account claimed it had been hacked. And yet, despite these red flags, the post exploded, reaching more than 1.5 million views in record time. If it was fake, why did it spread like truth? If it was a parody, why did it land with the weight of authority? And here lies the paradox that defines modern K-pop discourse. Perception often matters more than verification. In a fandom ecosystem trained by years of media patterns, fans do not simply ask whether something is true. They ask why it was said when it was said and who benefits from it being said now. The denial shifted the narrative instantly. The conversation was no longer about whether Jungkook and Winter were dating. That question, in many ways, became irrelevant. Instead, the focus turned to intent. What was being managed? What was being preempted? And why did this feel like damage control for a rumor that supposedly never existed? Veteran fans recognized the pattern immediately. In K-pop history, the fastest denials often precede the most complicated truths. Silence has always been the industry's preferred shield. Agencies stay quiet. Artists say nothing. Rumors fade. But when a denial arrives swiftly and publicly, it signals urgency. And urgency implies pressure. This is why the fandom reaction fractured so dramatically. Some armies and MIs welcomed the denial as protection, demanding apologies for Winter and Jungkook alike. Others rejected it outright, pointing out that Jungkook is an adult, fully entitled to a private life, and that denial culture itself is part of the problem. Meanwhile, a third group remained unconvinced, reading between the lines, dissecting timing, wording, and platform choice like forensic analysts. International fans joined the debate with brutal honesty. "We already knew," some said. Next. Others mocked the spectacle, calling it unnecessary, late, or performative. But even among those who dismissed the rumor, few ignored the oddity of the denial itself. Because in K-pop, nothing this loud is accidental. The lack of official statements from HYB and SM Entertainment only deepened the mystery. If the rumor was baseless, why not shut it down cleanly through agencies? Why allow a chaotic, semi-official denial to dominate headlines instead. The absence of clarification became its own form of noise, amplifying speculation rather than containing it. And then there was the cultural context that cannot be ignored. Jungkook, as one of the most globally recognized idols in history, occupies a symbolic space far beyond music. Any association, romantic or otherwise, carries weight. Winter, too, represents a new generation of K-pop stardom, carefully managed and intensely scrutinized. Linking their names, even in denial, creates a narrative that cannot be undone. This is the uncomfortable truth the industry rarely acknowledges. Denial does not erase rumors. It archives them. It validates their existence by acknowledging them publicly. It transforms whispers into headlines. And in doing so, it often raises a more dangerous question than the original rumor ever did. What exactly was Dispatch trying to accomplish? Was this an attempt to control the narrative before it spiraled? A preemptive strike against a story that never reached publication? Or was it simply a social media misfire that exposed how fragile trust has become between fans, media, and institutions? The confusion surrounding the account itself only intensified these questions. If it was fan-made, why did it mirror Dispatch's tones so precisely? If it was satire, why did it land with such authority? And if it was unofficial, why did no immediate correction follow? In the digital age, truth does not always travel faster than impact. By the time verification arrives, the emotional damage, or intrigue, has already taken root. And this incident proved just how volatile that reality has become in K-pop. More importantly, it revealed something deeper about fandom psychology. Fans are no longer passive consumers of information. They are analysts, historians, and pattern recognizers. They remember past denials that later unraveled. They remember how often not dating eventually became confirmed relationship. And they remember that in K-pop, transparency is rarely the default. This is why the denial felt suspicious. Not because fans wanted scandal, but because they have been trained by the industry to distrust simplicity. Years of carefully curated narratives have taught them that nothing exists in isolation, and that every public statement serves a purpose beyond its words. In this sense, the Jungkook winter denial was never just about two idols. It was about the power dynamics of media, the management of perception, and the unspoken agreements between agencies and outlets. It was about who controls the story, and when that control is exercised. As the dust settles, one thing remains clear. This was not closure. It was a trigger, a reminder that in K-pop, denial is not the end of a story, but often its most revealing beginning, and perhaps the most unsettling question of all lingers unanswered. If nothing happened, why does it feel like something almost did? Because in K-pop, the stories that refuse to end are rarely the ones built on facts alone, but on timing, silence, and the uneasy space between what is said and what is deliberately left unsaid. As the hours passed after the denial spread, the atmosphere across fandom spaces did not calm. It thickened. Screens refreshed endlessly, timelines flooded with screenshots, translations, counter-translations, and theories layered on top of one another until the original sentence, "They're not dating," almost disappeared beneath interpretation. This was no longer about Jungkook or Winter as individuals. This was about trust, and more dangerously, about expectation. Dispatch had conditioned audiences for years to believe that January 1st was not just a date, but a ritual. Every New Year's Day came with an unspoken promise. Truth would surface, privacy would crack, and speculation would finally be rewarded with confirmation. By choosing December 31st to deny rather than reveal, that ritual was interrupted. And when rituals are broken, people look for meaning. Why that date? Why that urgency? Why not wait for the new year to pass quietly? For some fans, the answer was simple. The denial was meant to protect, to shield two artists from becoming collateral damage in a cycle of invasive curiosity, to stop rumors before they could metastasize into something uglier. This interpretation framed Dispatch not as an aggressor, but as an unlikely gatekeeper, choosing restraint over exposure. Yet, even this charitable reading raised questions. Dispatch has rarely played the role of protector. Its reputation was built on revelation, not prevention. So why now? Why with these two names? Why break character at a moment when silence would have cost them nothing? Others saw strategy rather than protection. In an industry where narratives are currency, controlling the first headline can determine the lifespan of a rumor. By issuing a denial first, the conversation was anchored to negation rather than speculation. But the gamble here was obvious. Negation only works when audiences believe it, and belief, in this case, was fractured. The mismatch between the image and the names mentioned in the post became symbolic. To skeptics, it represented sloppiness. To conspiracists, misdirection. To neutral observers, proof that something about this entire episode was off balance. The account's bio claiming it had been hacked only deepened chaos, turning what should have been a clean denial into a puzzle with too many missing pieces. And puzzles are dangerous in fandom culture because they invite participation. Suddenly, every past interaction was re-examined. Every shared brand preference, every coincidental schedule, every fleeting similarity became potential evidence. Not because fans wanted confirmation, but because denial had opened the door to interpretation rather than closing it. This is the paradox Dispatch seemed to underestimate. In a hyper-connected ecosystem, saying no does not end curiosity. It redirects it, and often, it intensifies it. Meanwhile, a quieter but more mature conversation emerged beneath the noise. Longtime armies reminded others that Jungkook is not a concept, not a fantasy, not a permanent projection of youth. He is an adult man. Winter, too, is an adult woman navigating an industry that profits from her image while restricting her autonomy. Whether they were dating or not, the fixation itself revealed something uncomfortable about how idols are consumed. JK is old enough to date, one veteran fan wrote, echoing a sentiment that has grown louder with time. Whether it's true or not, stop targeting anyone linked to him. This was not just a defense of Jungkook or Winter. It was a critique of a system that treats denial as necessity rather than option. And yet, even this moral clarity could not fully dissolve the unease surrounding Dispatch's move. Because the issue was no longer personal. It was institutional. In recent years, the power balance between traditional K-pop media and global fandoms has shifted dramatically. Fans are faster, louder, and more international than ever before. Information spreads in minutes, not days. Control is fragile. In this environment, every official-sounding statement carries disproportionate weight, regardless of its origin. That is why the question of authenticity mattered so much. If the account was truly fan-made, then the damage was already done, exposing how easily authority can be mimicked. If it was unofficial but tolerated, then it revealed a troubling comfort with ambiguity. And if it was official, then the lack of follow-up clarification became a statement in itself. Silence after noise is never neutral. Days passed without agency confirmation. Speculation hardened rather than faded. Not necessarily into belief that Jungkook and Winter were dating, but into belief that something about the situation had been mishandled. That trust had been strained. That the industry, once again, underestimated the audience it helped educate. Historically, K-pop denials have followed a familiar trajectory. First comes the rumor, then the swift denial. Then months, sometimes years later, the quiet confirmation or the retrospective admission that things were misunderstood. Fans remember this pattern not because they enjoy scandal, but because repetition teaches expectation. Dispatch itself has contributed to this education. Every past revelation has reinforced the idea that what is denied today may be confirmed tomorrow. This does not mean every denial is false, but it does mean every denial is scrutinized, and scrutiny was inevitable here. The Jungkook Winter denial arrived at a moment when both artists symbolized something larger than individual fame. Jungkook represents the peak of global K-pop reach, a bridge between Korean idol culture and Western pop infrastructure. Winter represents the future, the carefully engineered evolution of fourth-generation stardom. Linking their names, even to deny a relationship, created a narrative collision that could not be ignored. Perhaps that was the greatest miscalculation. In attempting to erase a rumor, the denial immortalized it. The media headlines that followed rarely focused on the words, "not dating." Instead, they focused on the reaction, the confusion, the backlash. the disbelief. The denial became the story, overshadowing the supposed non-event it was meant to address. And this raises an uncomfortable but necessary question for the industry. Has denial lost its power?